there we are. We are live. Welcome, everybody. I see a few people still coming in, but we will go ahead and get started. We're right on time. My name is Sandra Harris, Executive Director of American Women Artists. And thank you for joining us for another in our new webinar series. And I'm excited today to introduce our presenter, who's Christine Drewyer, who is our immediate past president of the board. Many of you know her as one of our master signature artists. You might not know she was also a gallery owner for many years. So she's going to talk about a topic that we get questions about all the time, gallery and artist relationships. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Sandra. Welcome, everyone. I hope that this information, there's a lot in there, and I hope that you'll find some tidbits that help you with your experience with a gallery and how to make that a more harmonious, happy experience for you.
That's great. Before we, Christine has been kind enough to pre-record a talk for us, which I will play for you. And when it's over, we'll come back live. But I want to remind you all, you can see up in the corner, there's a chat, and you can enter your questions during the presentation so you don't forget. I'll be monitoring those. When we come back live, then I will ask Christine those questions. You can ask more in the chat, and I think we'll have a great conversation. So without further ado, I will play Christine's wonderful video for you, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Thank you, Sandra, and welcome to the presentation. On a recent trip to Boston, the stewardess said these words: "Please sit back and relax. We realize that today you have many options to get to your destination, and we're happy that you have chosen Southwest Airlines. We look forward to serving you in the future." If you read my gallery bio in our newsletter in preparation for this webinar, you'll see that I've had 40 years of consecutive gallery representation. I co-founded and owned my own gallery for 13 years and have been president of 2 national art organizations. Why, you might ask, did I choose the gallery experience when, just like Southwest Airlines, today there are many other options for selling my artwork? Yes, I'm an artist and I'm an avid collector too. And my very favorite way to buy my newest acquisitions is still through the gallery experience. And I fully personify the proverbial kid in a candy shop when I walk through the doors of any gallery. I love the lighting. I relish hearing about the artists and their journey. I want to be able to see a plethora of options and have my senses go wild in a vast array of creativity. For me, this is still the best accomplished through the gallery experience. And it would be like needing a wonderful dress for a special occasion and ordering it from Amazon versus, say, that Pretty Woman experience where I get to go into a specialty shop and touch the fabrics and try them on and feeling like I'd looked at every option and knowing that I'd made the best selection possible for me. Now, let's get more practical about that gallery experience. As an artist, you're going to have to wear many, many hats, and we'll delve into some of those. And I prefer that gallery as a partner and a teammate versus wearing all those hats myself. My goal here is to provide you with some comprehensive basics. Whether you're an emerging or an experienced artist, these tips are designed to help you to develop a wonderful relationship with your galleries. We will use the 5 C's method, and I will break it down into some digestible components. The 5 C's are credentials, cooperation, collaboration, and lastly, celebration. Let's talk about this number 1, consistency. As we are growing and developing, most of us can look back and identify those wonderful individuals who pushed us to grow and test our wings and encourage us to be the best that we could possibly be. We've all had them, coaches, sometimes a parent or a sibling or a teacher. I want you to conjure their lessons for a moment and apply the same principles to your art career. Now, if you're going to choose the gallery route, this is not a part-time job venture. It's highly competitive and a difficult full-time job. I recommend not even attempting it until you are certain that that is exactly the effort that you're willing to put in and ready to put in. Now that we're on that same page, let's begin with what I like to call the ready, set, go strategy. Now, as artists, you're going to be required, yes, required to wear many hats, and we'll talk about some of them here. Let's look at how do you get ready. Well, first and foremost, I recommend getting organized. Always remember that this is a job and a certain amount of time is required to be dedicated to your craft, whether that's 5 days a week or every other day or whatever feels like it works best for your lifestyle. This is mandatory. Set up a studio space where you know where everything is, that is laid out in a fashion which is conducive to productivity and convenience. Now, as we grow and emerge, this space will grow with you. If your space is small, where you barely have room to back up, that's okay. Claim it and guard it fiercely as your workspace. I had a space the size of a closet when I began. And after a divorce and buying my own home, the first thing I did was knock down walls and make a 40-foot studio. When I look at some of our very successful artists, they have entire buildings dedicated to the creation of their art. Wow, you might have seen some of them on our artist studio tours, and I'm working towards that still. Next, buy the best supplies and quality supplies that you can afford, whether that's brushes, paints, frames, or even packing supplies. It's noticed by your galleries as well as your collectors. You know, I'd rather have 5 linen mounted on birch panels than 20 student grade panels from Michael's. Sometimes your finished creation is only as good as the product that you created it on. Set up files on your computer and keep track of everything. There are many good products out there to assist you with this. And I know that Artwork Archives is a really good one that I understand is very proficient in tracking every component of the business side of your art job. Doesn't have to be fancy. You just need to find a method that works for you and use it. Never, ever let a painting or a sculpture out of your sight without a picture, period. You'll think that you'll remember the piece, but you won't, especially now that you're doing this full time. I set up files on my computer by year. I keep every single piece created in that year in that file. I label the pieces in the file with the title, the size, and indicate at the end of the year whether it's sold. For me, it's a great tool to see at a glance what was successful and what wasn't. This is a business. You must have a website. This is just a mandatory tool, which is crucial to your growth as an artist. Keep it fresh, keep it updated, and certainly don't neglect your events page. Whenever possible, have a professional company scan your artwork. Yes, I know it's expensive, but being a professional photographer is not one of the hats that you want to wear. I can't afford to scan every single piece. However, any piece that is going to be advertised in any capacity or be entered into a competition should be scanned. The professional companies will get 30 separation of color, whereas you're going to get the 3 basics on whatever camera you're using. It really does make a tremendous difference here. There's also lots of apps and programs for editing and modifying your work on your computer too. I use Photoshop, but there are others. I know some artists who are using Procreate and have great results from that program. Heck, you know, today's phones are often better than cameras in the olden days, like my old Nikon was. As you grow, consider making a logo. And if you do that, use it everywhere. Put it on your business cards, your packing, your email, your stationery. This is all part of your branding. Please remember, however, that your logo is not your business card. In the gallery experience, no personal information should be present. I wouldn't put anything on your work other than the tools which are going to assist your gallery in sales. Try to think of them as your agent and that they are fielding all the inquiries. Let them. Make your artwork as pretty and professional on the back as it is on the front. I know that sounds like pretty basic, but when I was an artist owner, I had an artist that used to represent, and she would reuse old panels and paint on both sides. Her reasoning was 2 for 1 and saving money. I was not impressed, and neither were her patrons. I use proper hardware to secure your piece into the frame, and I certainly will attach a small copy of my artist statement or bio to the back. A nice practice that I've come to rely on is using jewelry tags. They're just a little string with an inch square tag hanging on them. And I put all identifying information on those. If the tag falls off the wall in your gallery, Now your work is always identifiable to the gallery without having to dig through files to tell a client the title or the price of your piece. Now, I want you to consider how to use art speak. There is a language which is affiliated with your art, just like the language of music, for instance. You know what is meant when I use words such as tempo, beat, timing, rhythm, legato, etc. Remember that you're a professional artist and you need to know how to speak about your own language to best articulate how you want your work to be seen, perceived, and lastly, sold. Learn the meanings of such terms such as edges, composition, lyrical flow, color, tone, armature, base, pedestal, patina, etc. The list goes on. If you need some examples of this, you may want to consider watching some of the critiques that Sandra and I have done when doing the Artists Award ceremonies. They are a virtual love fest using professional art terms. The more comfortable that you get in being able to articulate your thoughts about your work in professional terminology, the better prepared you're going to be to interact with your gallery, your patrons, collectors, everyone. So just practice. Let's remember that your primary objective is sales here. When we think about well-known artists, we most certainly come up with an image in our minds that represents their works, right? If I were to say, for instance, to you, Gladys Roldan de Morris, I'd imagine that you might be picturing a beautiful Hispanic woman on horseback with colorful flowing skirts. What image do people think of when they think of your artwork? To achieve a recognizable style, you need to keep in mind the word branding. Let's just talk briefly about the basics for a moment here. I'm sure that we all remember an exercise that we learned in primary school, where you would be given 5 examples of something, and you must identify which one did not belong. For instance, the subject was barnyard animals. You would get a picture of a cow, a horse, a pig, a chicken, and a zebra. Now, I want you to apply this same principle to your artwork. When we're thinking about gallery representation, your gallery does not want the zebra, whether this is applying to a gallery or after you've garnered representation. Yes, we're all creative and individuals, and that means that we're going to want to experiment and grow and expand our horizons. However, that zebra is most gallerists' biggest nightmare. I recommend a discussion with them before you turn to the savannah. Next, get a buddy or a critique group. This has been one of the most beneficial practices that I ever established. Often, we're just too close to a piece to see its flaws, and other respected artists or group of artists whose opinions you value will tell you how you might make it better. Put on your thick skin and listen. You won't always agree, but in my experience, that's a rare instance. I still meet regularly with a few artists, and we'll pour ourselves a glass of vino. We'll say, okay, let's go in and bust them up. How do you know when you have enough artwork to approach a gallery for representation? Well, I recommend having at least a dozen consistent pieces before you ever think of approaching a gallery. Most galleries will, on average, want to begin with anywhere from 4 to 6 pieces of your work. It won't all necessarily go out onto the floor at once, as sometimes they'll want to keep things in reserve to further tempt a potential buyer, or they may not have the space and wish to rotate your work out to keep it fresh. As we discussed earlier, your primary objective is sales. Why 12, you might be thinking? Well, now I want you to imagine in the best of all possible experiences, you immediately sell out of everything that you brought the gallery in 2 months. Well, yay! We all want that, and we know that when you're hot, and you surely do not want to stop that ball from rolling. You are going to need to be prepared to replace any piece instantly. Don't give it time to cool off. When I use the word consistency, it doesn't mean rote or dull or samey-samey. I'm speaking once more about that recognizable style in your art. It be any subject matter or medium. It shouldn't matter if you've done a still life or a landscape. The fact is, it shouldn't look like 2 different artists did the work. This is not the time to impress a gallery with your versatility. Remember the zebra. Your gallery is there to build your reputation and cultivate collectors for you. Be sure that you know what you're trying to cultivate here. Consistency falls into presentation as well. Pick a few frame styles which best suit your work if you can, or compatible bases for your sculpture, and try to be consistent with them. In my experience, As a gallery owner, as well as an artist, some of the most effective presentations for display is grouping. It looks so much more cohesive and pleasing when your presentation is compatible when displayed together. There are obviously going to be exceptions to this. Another rule of thumb, which has served me well, is if I wouldn't buy it myself, don't put it in the gallery. These are some of the basic ground rules for being prepared to approach a gallery for representation, and I hope that these tips are helpful to you. Now that we've established consistency in our work, and now that we are ready, let's get set for that number 2C, which is the credentials part. Let's talk about for a minute about credentials. What are they? Are they important? Do we need them? How do we build them? What is their purpose? Well, with the gallery experience, credentials are one of the most important basic tools that they will utilize in sales in building your collector base. Imagine for a moment how wonderful it would be to be admiring a piece that you're considering adding to your own personal collection. The gallery representative says, yes, you have a great eye. This piece was an award winner in a national art competition. In that one statement, she has told your potential collectors, number one, they have great taste. Number two, you're celebrated and an accomplished artist. And number three, that in a competitive scenario, you are recognized as a winner. Pretty good tools, I would say, for selling, wouldn't you? One of my favorite ways to build credentials is to enter national or competitive art organizations. Some of these prestigious groups are pretty difficult to get into. Some require a jury process. Others, like the Salmagundi Club, for instance, will require the endorsement and recommendation of another member. And others are so large that just getting into the show is an accomplishment in itself. I treat my national art organizations as a fourth gallery. The competition is fierce, and I don't want to be skimming off the cream from my galleries, so I specifically paint for them. Another benefit of the art organizations that I can potentially get prize awards and then sell that piece. If it doesn't sell there, the awards now become fodder for my resume and boosted credentials. It's wonderful having multiple options of rotating work around if they don't sell, and now I have them for one of my gallery venues. Art education is another way that you may want to add to your resume or portfolio of credentials. When you've graduated, say, from SCAD or Harvard, for instance, well, that's so impressive and now becomes another tool that your gallery can use to talk about your accomplishments. Doing workshops or teaching is another way, a fabulous way to build your credentials. Clients will be impressed that you're skilled enough to teach others how to become better artists. Oftentimes, also, your students will become collectors and your biggest fans. Being on the boards of art-related organizations can boost your experience and prestige as well. When the gallery knows that you understand the work involved and what they do to represent you, they're more apt to formulate a deeper partnership with you. Be sure to develop that good, updated resume, as its main purpose is to help with validating your price structure and saleability. Remember, the more credentials that you have, the more attractive you're going to be to your collectors. These credentials validate and legitimize the price structure of your painting or sculpture's value. The next step on this journey is number 3. The number 3C is cooperation. So now we're ready. Let's get set. What does that look like? Number 3, cooperation. Once you've chosen your gallery, or they have chosen you, I want you to remember that this is a partnership, a very close partnership, and it's relatively symbiotic. Do not forget that the gallery is working for you too, and not always just the other way around. A large amount of trust is going to be required from both of you. One of your gallery's jobs is to fairly display several of your works with proper lighting. I would also expect that they have some knowledge of your history or your background so that they're able to inform your patrons about you and your work. On the other side of that, it's your job to provide these tools. Get a clear understanding of your gallery's policies, as this will lead to a smoother and more harmonious relationship in the long run. At the beginning of your partnership is the time to ask some very pertinent questions. Some examples of those might be, what is your payment schedule? Do you do layaway plans? And if so, when can I expect to be given my portion of that? Some galleries will pay as they receive, and others will not pay you until the piece is paid in full. How long does the gallery wish to hold on to a piece before I can remove it? If I have moved a piece to another gallery and a patron comes back wanting that piece, what is your policy on how that is handled? Find out these different scenarios and how they're handled in the beginning so that everyone agrees and understands one another's roles. Now, you may expect to pay a 50% commission to a gallery when they sell your work. Ooh, I know, but this is the norm. In rare instances, that split could be higher in the artist's favor. For instance, one scenario where I might see this happening is for commission work, as it is more work for the artist, and that you can negotiate your rate of commission for that. Another might be in a cooperative gallery setting, for instance, where the gallery shares, the artist will share some of the gallery duties and the running of the gallery. But be sure to get these policies discussed early on. Now, if your gallery is not within driving distance, it's not unusual to negotiate some shared shipping expenses. When a gallery is willing to have some skin in the game, if a painting or sculpture doesn't sell, I feel more confident that they're as invested as I am. Another expectation that you should have of your gallery is that they're building a collector base for you. They will keep track of who is buying your work and remember to contact the client to let them know if there's something that you've just given the gallery and it might be a good fit or some interest to them. In my experience, the galleries typically will not share their patrons with you. This is not too unusual. Some will, and I think that's great if they're willing to do that. However, here we go with the wearing of an additional hat. Do you really want to be the one chasing down your patrons? It's much easier for your gallery to sing your praises than you doing it yourself, in my humble experience. This is why you pay commission to the gallery. I want to talk about how you may be able to participate in this next section of collaboration a little more. For those of you who are lucky enough to have more than one gallery, it's imperative that you keep your pricing consistent in all places. If you put your prices on your website, same rule applies. With the good old World Wide Web today, your collectors most certainly can and easily find you and determine where they can get your work for the best price available. If you're an emerging artist and you're unsure of how to price your work, trust me, your gallery will be interested in getting the best value for your work too, and that they can legitimately believe is the worth. They are best at advising you on where to begin if you're uncertain how to price your work. In most cases, in my personal experience, having owned a gallery and working with beginning artists, they are typically underselling their work and not the other way around. Now, here is something very important to consider. You can always go up. However, in my opinion, it is a disaster to go backwards. Let's just say that you sell a piece for $1,000, and after that, you get a stall, and now they're not moving as fast as you'd like. You simply must not reduce the price to $800. Now, that very clear message that you're giving to the collector that bought the very same size piece for $1,000 is that their piece is really only worth $800. It's just bad form. I would rather see a very modest and slow increase than going up every year. Remember, we're building an empire here. Do not ever undercut your gallery. If you're going to sell a piece that's not been seen yet, make it the same price that it would go for in your gallery. Your collectors will figure out very quickly that if they bypass the gallery and go directly to you, they'll get a better deal. It's another hat that you don't wish to wear. Get a good understanding of the flow of your gallery and how often they wish to trade out your work. Let's face it, sometimes even the very best pieces, they just don't sell as readily as you'd like or at all. It's not good to have a piece sit and stagnate where a consumer is able to see that very same piece is still there a year later. We need them to believe that you're a happening thing, right? This does not mean that the piece isn't good. Sometimes it does, but not always. It still takes the right customer to walk through the door, have the means and the wall space to make it happen. I like to tell myself that I'm going to paint always as if I'm preparing for a show. Remember that full-time job bit. For me, a good thing to remember is to be prepared to trade out work. I like to do it quarterly. Obviously, if the gallery doesn't want to give it back, don't. They know which of your works is getting attention and energy, and that will usually translate to a sale because they believe in it. I recommend doing the full size spectrum of pieces. I found it to be a good strategy to do companion pieces or even a small series. Often, if there's a piece that has a great companion, the gallery can suggest that they could sell them as a pair. Most people have two end tables or on either side of their couch or bedside tables, and they just might very well want two at the same time. I do the same size and I put them in the same frame, and yet I make them individual enough that they can sell on their own merits without the intended companion. Do not cold call your gallery. If you want to bring patrons in, let the gallery know ahead of time. There are sweet spots in the gallery, and they know that when you have a potential client to come in and see it, they will feature you or they will bring out additional work in preparation for a sale. If you just personally wish to drop in, still let your gallery know ahead of time. There's going to be opportunities to suit up and show up. Even when you're planning to bring in or trade out new work, make a call and make an appointment first. So we have gotten ready and now we're all set. Let's talk about my favorite part, the go. Let's look at the fourth C of collaboration. Now, back in the day, before the onslaught of social media and artists having their own websites, the gallery was much more reluctant to share in the growth of an artist in a public arena. Let's face it, even today, they work their butts off to promote their artists and gather collectors for you, and many are still afraid that you're going to snatch them up and run once they've done all the hard work to establish that for you. Trust me, I had many who did just that. Once more, I'm going to use the music industry to demonstrate a point here. We all know that any superstar rock group has several layers of followers. There's the groupies, the fans, and the ride or die followers. In our industry, the groupies would be those stalwart folks that take time to always hit the like button on your postings on either Facebook or Instagram. Some will comment or even share your work. Many of these groupies will never buy your artwork. However, they play a crucial role in helping you to grow that brand that we spoke about. We should all be groupies for each other. And you may fully collaborate with your galleries also on this point and be one of their groupies. The next tier up are the fans. Well, they would be the peeps that attend the concerts. They look forward to every new show that's coming up. I also believe that we should be fans for our galleries. If they're sponsoring an event, show up. If one of your fellow artists has an exhibition, consider attending. There's power in numbers, and your gallery will appreciate the extra bodies, which creates a happening vibe. It's also an opportunity for you to engage with patrons who may be interested in your work too. Lastly, we have those ride or die tier, the rock stars. This is the loyal bunch that will follow them. They're going to attend shows and concerts. They'll buy the paraphernalia, and most importantly, they're going to buy the albums. These folks are that coveted group which become your collectors, the most important sector in the whole enchilada here. They will follow you, they'll check your website, your social media page, and the galleries for new works and events. They'll want first dibs on the new stuff, and typically once they do, they're going to do it again. Remember, for each 6x8 that you sell, there is a potential ride or die collector in there. Every opportunity that you get, share your work on social media, in your newsletters, your emails, or any other marketing strategy that you use. And do not forget to include your gallery where the piece can be purchased. Most galleries know way in advance what their schedule is for the coming year. One of the ways that you can collaborate with them is to make yourself aware of any upcoming events or exhibitions where your work might be appropriately included. I also pay close attention to holiday seasons. And for instance, I'll usually be preparing pieces for Valentine's Day in January. Now, not all artists are going to get a solo show for that matter. Often they will be lucky to be included in a group show. If you're a new artist to the gallery, I would advise you not to rush into this process. Nothing can be more discouraging than to have a premature show without enough personal collectors and have it feel less than stellar. There will always be events where you can participate, like an anniversary show or a holiday themed show. Small gems shows at the end of the years is a great way for you to rake in those new collectors. Remember to give your galleries the cream of the crop and not the leftovers. You're building an empire here. Another exciting way for you to get some additional recognition in your gallery is to have a consistent body of work, which celebrates a special event. Say you just took a trip to Europe and you want to document your journey in paintings or sketches. I know that Master Signature member Heidi Pressey had a glorious museum exhibition in Steamboat Museum in Colorado about the lives of early American settlers. And she went so far as to make and sew authentic period clothing for her models that she painted from. It was very impressive. Galleries love this sort of enthusiasm and authenticity. I find that they're always looking for new ideas to entice their patrons into the gallery also. With each important piece that you create, try to give your gallery the tools to sell it. Let's face it, your collectors are in awe of what you do here. Remember, contrary to popular belief, most couldn't dream of doing what you do. And art is one of the particularly more romanticized professions. I try to do a small write-up about these special pieces whenever possible. You don't have to write a book here. I would be something like what you might consider writing for a short essay for a catalog. I will typically adhere that to the back of the piece along with my mini bio. Naturally, if your gallery wants a copy, have a Word document ready to send them. Sometimes it could become an instant press release or magazine write-up and the work is already done for them. If your gallery would like you to do a demo, say yes. If you're not comfortable with it, I suggest practicing as often as you can so that you will be. Talk about your work while you're creating it. Do a demo for your family, for your dog, even in a mirror if you must. Remember that art speak tool that we talked about in the consistency portion of this talk. Well, here's your chance to use it. When artists are given a solo exhibition, they're typically asked to give a gallery talk or do a question and answer session with their patrons. That's where Art Speak tool that you've been practicing comes in. Here's your opportunity where it's imperative to get comfortable with loving up on your own art. Be proud of what makes you uniquely you. The gallery believes in you, and you need to as well. Forget that being shy part here and sing the praises of what you can do that no one else on the planet can do the way that you do. Trust me, they are interested. Lastly, and when you're ready to think about that next body of work that you'll potentially be bringing into the gallery, ask them what they'd like to see from you. It might surprise you. Try to remember those ride or dies and what they might be looking for, and don't forget what you're building. At the end of the day, all of this should translate into you having more time to focus on creating your artwork. Now let's move on to the final C of celebration. Well, for those of you who are still hanging in there with me, we come to my final and favorite of the 5 C's in celebration. I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction, which states clearly that what you are and what you think and what you speak in the reality that is quantum physics, you may just be proven right and make it so. A sort of be careful what you wish for scenario. If that is the case, then gratitude is a major component for achieving more of the feast and less of the famine outcome. At least that is what has mostly worked out for me personally. When you have a sale or a small victory, for instance, acceptance into a show, winning an award, getting a brand new collector, each and every one of these milestones is a reason to celebrate. Don't forget those art critique buddies that are in the trenches with you. When one wins, every one of you wins. So very often, everything that we do as artists is a collaborative effort, and don't forget to acknowledge that. So go out there together and raise a glass or have a potluck with sharing of everyone's newest pieces. Toast your good fortune to be able to do what you love and that there are still some collectors willing to invest in your skills and your talents. You know, there's a saying that goes, if you love what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life. Well, as the creative and talented ones, we sure do know how true that statement is. Publicly announce your sales and accomplishments on social media. Personally thank and acknowledge your galleries for their efforts and expertise in helping to make this happen. They stand on the wall, oftentimes in high heels. They pay the employees, the electric bills, keep consistent and long hours, put on countless exhibitions and receptions. They invest in catering, wine, advertising, marketing, all in the efforts to sell your work. Let them know how grateful that you are to be partnering with them. Phew, that's a lot of hats you're not having to wear. Don't forget those hats. You might be having to wear all of them to sell your work. Marketer, framer, writer, secretary, packer, shipper, photographer, professional fretter, and many, many more. I'm so happy to have the partnership of my galleries that help me to remember that teamwork really does make the dream work. So go do the happy dance, dear talented peeps, and keep on creating. And I hope that this has been a helpful tool in your consideration of collaborating with the gallery team. I thank you for your time and your attention. And it was my goal as an artist and a former gallery owner to provide you with some better insight when trying to determine if the gallery representation is the right route for you.
Well, thank you, Christine. That was an incredible presentation. Lots of information.
Lots of information.
Just wonderful. I think it's so great to have your perspective, both as an artist and a gallery owner, a former gallery owner, and a collector. So we're thrilled. So as a reminder to everybody, you can use that chat to ask questions. We did have a few come through. So we will ask the ones. I'll keep an eye and keep them coming. So we're going to kick it off with the first question. Do you have any experience or links on shipping art out of the country?
That's a very good question, and that is a particular sticky wicket for many artists and galleries. And in this instance, I typically will let my galleries handle that because there's so many complications that can arise with that. So, for instance, there's oftentimes a VAT tax or something that's due from customs in another foreign country. First and foremost, especially if you're going to do this yourself, in the shipping overseas, make sure that it's legitimate. You know, there's a lot of scams out there. There are some ways to figure that out. Just really make sure that you have a live person that is wanting your piece. And then if you aren't certain, the shipping companies will definitely give you the guidelines, follow them. They won't usually send it without all the proper forms that are filled out. But this is why I really like my galleries to kind of handle that. And then this is another instance where insurance is really a crucial piece. I know that we have a shipping insurance agency that we sponsor with AWA. That's one you might want to look into. I really do recommend that. Packing is crucial. If you don't think your gallery's certain how to do it, you know, that standard box with bubble wrap is not going to cut it because they already send the elephants out. But you know, think about it being on a cargo ship and being tossed. So it really has to be carefully done. And that is, you know, those are the sticky ones are customs and those kinds of things. But yes, I have had.
I agree with you. Every country's different. We've heard from our Canadian members that even shipping from Canada, they have trouble, you know, crossing borders.
Correct.
And you're right. Shipandinsure.com is a vendor that actually is going to come and do a webinar for us. But they've given all our members a year free membership
Fantastic.
to access their services, and you can buy insurance that you don't get right from the carriers. So
Fantastic.
I think that's great, both the packing and the shipping and the insurance. So thank you for that. Great question.
Whether that's going overseas or just nationally, they're great to have. So
absolutely. Yeah, I've heard artists say, oh, I don't bother with that. And I just, no, you must.
You don't need it till you need it.
We have another great question. Thank you for this one. Did you approach your galleries directly, or did some of them approach you?
Good question. Well, you got to remember, I've been at this game a very long time, so a little of both. Mostly I approach them, and I've been probably in, I would say at least a dozen to 15 galleries in my experience of 40 years of representation. And first thing I do is really look for somebody that's on my is that these galleries that are excellent probably get at least minimum 300 to 500 applicants per month. That is a genuine, real deal truth. And so if they have protocols, really try to follow them. I really am, now that shipping has gotten so heinous, and you really want to be able to, if things slow down, for instance, and they always do, there are always lulls, but you want to be able to make certain that you really are being fairly represented. And so if you are close enough to drive, two of my galleries are about, one's 2 hours away, one's 3 hours away. I can get in the car, I can go, I can suit up and show up and make certain that, I'm being represented the way I really thought I was going to be in the beginning. And that's kind of a nice rule of thumb. Once they get to know you, if you're approaching and you haven't got the representation yet, go in, attend their shows, know their artists, know their collection, really know, are you bringing something to the table that will be a good fit and that they don't already have? Because they're not going to want to compete with their stable of artists already. And then as they get to know your face, if you've gone through their protocol, for instance, which is send a resume and your website, for instance, and you don't hear back, one email after a month is probably appropriate. And then if you don't hear back, I think a phone call is okay. Did you receive my email? And then if they have seen it, there's nothing wrong with saying, now that they recognize your face, I would love to show you a few originals. May I make an appointment to show you those if that's something you're interested in? They may say no, but enthusiasm and optimism are two really great ingredients when you're looking for representation.
That's great, because you're addressing some other questions that are coming in. Somebody asks the best way to approach galleries.
Yes.
And this person says, I filled out their forms online, and then I'm not sure if I need to do more. So it sounds like you take a little bit of a measured approach, following their instruction, but then not being
exactly. Well, one thing I can certainly tell you for sure, don't ever just show up with your wares under your arms and say, I was in town and I just happened to have 4 originals. I thought you'd like to see them. They just don't have time. So, make an appointment, try to make that personal connection where you can. This is going to be, if you're going to be in the gallery, it's going to be a really symbiotic partnership, almost like a marriage. And so try to follow their rules and just, try to get an opportunity to show them the originals when you can. But, today's photography and websites really are a brilliant tool that we have today. We used to deal with slides and I'd hold them up to the light and say, nope. That's right. And today, that digital photography is just spectacular. So
absolutely. They'll know. And another person asked a very similar scenario. Some galleries state on their website that they accept submissions. Some say they don't. Some don't say anything. So if they don't say anything, do you think it's fair game to approach them with a query?
Yes, absolutely. They're going to expect that, and they get it all the time. So I try to call, say 11 o'clock in the morning, not the minute they've walked in the door, or not at their lunchtime, or not when they're trying to leave. Right. I try to avoid Mondays and Fridays, and then I would say, what is your protocol for reviewing new artists? And are you accepting art at this time? And they'll tell you. Some only review once a year. Some look all the time. truthfully, what I can tell you is if you've got exceptional artwork and they get a peek at it and they want it, I don't care how crowded they are, they're going to try and figure out a way to take you. So,
well, and to your point in your, in your presentation, you talked about the importance of a website in this day and age.
Crucial.
It cannot be overstated that they can quickly get a glimpse of your work. Don't make them work too hard to find it.
Nope.
And having your resume updated and everything, it is much easier to see somebody's quote portfolio today than it used to be. Oh, this is
Glance.
Yes, this is a good one. Do you consider one of your galleries your primary gallery and the other secondary? And if so, do the secondaries know this?
Oh, that's a good, juicy question. One word, no, I don't. I have to have confidence that our work is precious, right? And it's a solitary profession. We sit by ourselves for hours and hours and hours creating it. And so it doesn't just fly off our brushes as some people think. So you really have to have confidence in that gallery that they're going to be able to sell it for you. And so it's really, there's a flow and a flux, just like anything. Things don't, it goes in patterns. When you sell one, you usually sell a flurry, or if you have a show or they have a show, but sometimes the best of the best, it just isn't going to sell. And it really is lovely to have that secondary spot that is, if you've got a style, and then your gallery should be consistent with, you're not going to go to an all contemporary glass and chrome if you do, trompe-l'oeil. You're just not. You're going to look like a nosebleed in there. And so if your galleries are consistent with your style, they're going to welcome your overflow, and they're not going to say, well, that's not going to work for me. Each gallery is its own entity too, and it's a reflection of the owner and the way they like to display. And sometimes it gets a fresh face in a new place and a new opportunity. As I told you in the talk, I really think of my competitive organizations as another gallery, so that I'm not robbing the cream out of my galleries to take it for the competitions. They hate that. So, but they're also ready for new, fresh work. And you can't just say, well, they haven't sold this, so I'm not going to take them anything else. For me, 3 or 4 galleries, I paint full time and I'm relatively prolific, and I love that flow. And they all know what the galleries I'm in. I list them on my website. I list the gallery it's in. If I move it, I try to stay on top of that and change it. They will respect that you're with other guys. Many of my galleries will collaborate with each other if there's a patron that is kind of interested in something that they saw when it was somewhere else, and we'll work it out. But nope, I love them all. They're all my children.
That's right, and they're all different. I love that, because they'll all have a different clientele, and
they do.
Approach. That's wonderful. Okay, well, this is interesting. So we didn't talk a lot about problems yet.
Oh, goody! Give me problems.
Very positive. So let me read you this first one. This person has been out of galleries for 20 plus years because what you were just addressing, in fact, they were asking for, one gallery was asking for all this person's work, didn't want any other gallery to have it. And then another one wasn't going to notify them of sales until they did the unexpected drop by. And then another scenario, they had friends have a gallery close and they couldn't get their work back and had to end up in court. So what kind of scenarios have you seen, and how might you prevent this kind of thing from happening?
Those are really great questions. And I think this is where you have to be. And the answer is yes, I've experienced almost all of those to some degree. I think it just happens. But again, if you are very careful about your interviewing, this is when I said to you, they're working for you too. I mean, you're working for each other, but if they don't pass your muster, I think for me personally, unless a gallery is very, very exclusive and they are going to send me straight to Hollywood just because they have that kind of clientele and reputation. If they say we want exclusivity, and if they're Pre to West and they want everything I paint and they can sell it consistently, great. But that's not necessarily the case for a working artist that I love the local experience, quite frankly. I love to know that my paintings are maybe sometimes that only piece that somebody puts over their couch, So the rules need to be known up front, talk about these scenarios, about shipping, about, this is where contracts are really important. Sign them, read them. I know some artist friends that will get their attorney to review them first. I haven't needed to because my paintings don't sell for $40,000, but they're still very valuable to me. And if something were to happen, that's critical for us. I want a gallery that's as invested in my art as I am invested in it, and in me. And a lot of that is solved if you have a personal relationship with the gallery owner. You kind of avoid a lot of that. This is why when I see these deals of galleries that are kind of pop-ups in New York, I don't know them. Just like a lot of art galleries will say, we're going to take this artist because they've been vetted. They're in all these other galleries and they have these credentials. That goes the same for a gallery. And artists, it's a tight-knit little community, really. We're very competitive, but we know. And you can pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think of this? Have you anybody in this chat group know these people? Has anybody had experience with them? I had a gallery close that had not informed me, and it was one of the artists that was in there with me, said, you need to come get your work. They're thinking of closing. And so the artists are another very great reference if you think there's something that's a little bit awry. If you have a funny feeling, you usually have it for a reason. Check it out.
Yeah, I think that's great. And my immediate thought when I read, some of these scenarios, it really does boil down to the expectations and an agreement up front.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to enter into the business relationship without, and you said that in your presentation too, the questions to ask. How does this happen? How do you pay me? When do you pay me? But kind of having protection up front so that you know what will happen in the event of those things happening instead of getting hit by it. So great.
It can be little things also, Sandra, like for instance, someone's put a painting of yours on layaway and they paid for half of it. Now they've lost their job.
Right.
What is the circumstances there? Do they get the painting? Do you have to wait? Do they forfeit their money? All of those things you really do need. It is a business and you've got to look at it and read it.
This next question kind of relates to approaching folks. So somebody is eyeing an art dealer who does not have a public gallery and private appointments only, but also doesn't state any submission guidelines. Sounds very exclusive and very private. So this artist is wondering, how do you approach? How could you approach somebody like that? Because they're interested in them.
Well, I think there is a place for reps. There are people I know who have had a personal rep that have really grown their careers. Again, this is the hats, right? And those are specific people that I think kind of are in lieu of galleries. Oftentimes your rep will work to get you into galleries. I'm more comfortable with that kind of representative. Depends on where you're trying to go with this. You may want to be exclusively a print artist and you just want somebody to market you. And, I know I have a place that I rent. I don't want to do that thing where I have to find renters. And there are people that have that kind of work. This is where I think a gallery for me is the best, most comfortable. There's so many ways to sell art today. You can usually reps of that variety are going to find you. They're looking, they're trolling the internet
and there's a reason they're not advertising in public hours and they will try to find you. But again, a network could help. It can. I won't say no to, if I don't know the circumstances, I'd ask a whole lot of questions. Right.
Yeah.
So I have one of my own. This sort of made me think about people trying to get into galleries and build their career. and this idea of credentials. It's sort of the chicken and the egg. How do you get credentials when you don't have any credentials? How do you get started? So I'm curious for you, how did you begin building that sort of reputation with your credentials?
You know, it's you start small. Enthusiasm and excitement about every win is a potential credential, right? You know, today we are so blessed with the internet. You know, you can get these shows that are national competitions. They are so bloody hard to get into sometimes. Just getting in the show is a real perk. And you can say, I got in, you know, that's a credential. It's all tools and fodder. You know, I don't necessarily recommend putting that you got the blue ribbon in the county fair. So, you know, I think if you're a professional, you probably, I was behind the counter in the gallery working 40 hours a week, painting full time, and I didn't have a clue where I was on a national realm. And I thought, no, not a prayer I'm ever going to get in. And not only did I get in, I won the President's Awards. Nobody was more surprised than me. So, you know, I think that if you're a professional and you're already painting, you won't have so much trouble as you think finding how to get your credentials.
Well, I think that's great advice. And I also think sort of keeping the record of all of these things.
Yes.
Magazine article, if you've been, you know, mentioned on websites, and sort of having your own archive.
Yeah.
Where you can show these things and list them on your website, please.
Yeah. Get in the habit of loving up on your arts. If you do an important piece, I mean, people do want to know about you and what were you thinking and why did you paint that? So just get in the habit of writing little essays. They are handy. They're your words. The people want to know what you thought. Why did you paint that? Or why did you sculpt that? What were you thinking? So these all become fodder if you're an advertiser. I am a firm believer in advertising. It doesn't have to be the $3,000 a page ad. It can be the little ones in the digital ad presentation. You get consistent. They'll say, you know, we'd like to do a little feature on you. And trust me, they're going to ask you to write it. And you already have it. So those are good practices to have in your back pocket.
Being prepared for the success. I love
that.
So this is sort of back to the gallery scenario. So somebody has a gallery that they like very much.
Yeah.
But now they're asking for exclusivity. You know, it used to be, we don't want you to have another gallery, but now it's crept into the online world and sites like First Dibs. And so this gallery is saying, we don't even want you to compete online with these other formats. And of course, we have so many. They're considering it, according to this person, the same market and too much competition. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm very opinionated on that. Okay. I would say absolutely not. Unless you can guarantee that you can supply the sales that my galleries give me, I can't afford to give one person all the rights to my work, even myself. You know, I mean, if I want to take a commission even, that's still my right to do it outside of my galleries even. So that's really encroaching on your creativity and your productivity. So I think that's a very dangerous thing. I think it's a really piggy thing of them to expect. Today, the galleries are savvy. They are using these social medias that you are doing some marketing for them with, and they are doing some marketing for you with. This is symbiotic. This is working. Everybody wins. And so you can share it. It doesn't have to be a competitive thing where they're feeling like they're being gypped because somebody else is seeing it somewhere else. So
it's a red flag.
I think it's a red flag. Yeah, I say stay away from it unless they can.
I have to say one thing. In the question is also, sales have slumped over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. So if you have that combination of, we don't want you to compete anywhere, but we're also not making the sales for you,
you're toast.
It goes.
You've just sunk yourself, and you know, this is because we need the validation somewhere. It's really hard. You're already so isolated a lot of the time. That's why the artist buddies are really kind of crucial. But if you don't have those sales, it's very discouraging, and your confidence can go downhill so quickly.
Right.
I don't care if it's just a $200 sale. Boy, you feel like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing this for, so.
Well, and this makes me kind of lead into this idea. We've talked about getting representation. But if you get into this scenario that sounds a little toxic, frankly, how do you know when it's time to break up with your gallery? What do you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, those are good points. I've had to do it.
Tell us about that.
Okay, well, it's, first of all, it's a precious commodity. Their wall space is very valuable, and your artwork is not just, growing on trees. So it has to be the good fit, and you really don't always know. You think you do, but it's not unusual. Your galleries could often have a beginner's clause saying we're going to give you a year of trial time where we're going to give it a go and see how you do, because their real estate for that wall space is pretty dear, and so is your art. And so, I think you don't ever burn a bridge or badmouth the gallery or say they can't sell. You don't want to do that, because it is the people that come to the door. Typically, in my understanding, if you've both chosen one another and it doesn't work, sometimes it's just the people that come to the door. I really like to, if you stick with that quarterly thing where you're trading out the work, so you've given it a good shot, and it didn't, you can say, gosh, I am so sorry. I really wanted this to be so successful for both of us, and it wasn't. Let's just give it I'm going to have to pull my work out, but I will always be your biggest fan. Maybe if I shift my style a little bit, or you think you'd like to give it a go, and you have an exhibition, you think I might be an opportunity to try again. But no, you're gonna, and if you do that with manners, today people just forget manners. I wonder where they went. But typically, when you're nice, people will be nice back to you, and they want it to happen truthfully as much as you do, and maybe more.
And again, your initial agreement should outline what happens and what the steps are.
Exactly.
It's like a prenup, right?
It is. Oh, that's a great prenup. Yes.
So we've passed an hour, but we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So this is a great one. Why don't galleries show prices on their websites?
I can address that. There's so many thoughts on that, Sandra, and I have many artists that are dyed in the wool. I just watched Trish Adams, lovely presentation, and she says if they've got to hunt for it and they got to click more than once, you've lost them. And that, for some people, that's true. That's right. And I think, having been a gallery owner and watched how people purchased, they can be timid. I always had the price tags on the work in the gallery, but I didn't on the website, because there are so many scenarios. Think about this. Suppose they see a piece and they really love it, but if they love it enough, that they will pick up the phone and they will call the gallery. They do. I've sold a $10,000 painting from a postcard before, sight unseen. So they will do it. They will. But you get that opportunity. They want to know about the artist. They want to know, are they collectible? Sometimes, if you don't have to say, well, if that's too much money, you can't afford it. Gives you a diplomatic way to say, we have lots of ways that we can get you in trouble here. How do you feel about a potential AWA program? We do offer that. Mm-hmm. Or suppose they like that and they can't decide between two, and you say, let's give you a collector's, I can waive some of that. The gallery will eat 10% if you're going to buy both, and we'll do something for you, or we'll deliver and install that for you. There's so many things that give you that opportunity to bond with somebody and make them a collector. The gallery experience isn't just click and go. Right. It's the experience. Most people that are buying art through a gallery, really, they love the experience. Heck, we kept champagne in the refrigerator. And when somebody would have a new acquisition, we'd say, are we going to celebrate now? Typically we would. So, they love that experience.
Right. And I have to say, I have a former life as a gallery manager, and we didn't have prices. published either. And
Right.
for that very reason that it was the style of the sales was to get
Yeah.
into conversation with somebody,
Yeah.
to gauge their interest. And like you said, it might not be carved in stone. Because
Sometimes it isn't.
if somebody is interested in a companion piece, like you said, or
or suppose they live in Colorado and you're in Maryland, you can say, let us do the shipping for you. We're so delighted that, and we will guarantee that if it doesn't match your expectations, we will ship it to you at our expense. You can ship it back at yours. These are all conversations that now you've got a relationship.
Right.
With
and
someone.
I already had that experience with pieces that were going to be installed like for public art, that the artist really wanted that to happen. And perhaps it was even a government agency, and there, we could work on the price, right?
Yeah.
So you want to have that conversation with that person. So that's the reason against it. But somebody just asked, what about on your own website? Prices, yay or nay?
I don't. Again, I list the gallery where it's available.
Okay.
And if they email me, I don't make them work for it. I tell them right up front, the first line back to them, thank you so much for your interest in my work. The piece you're inquiring about sells for blah, blah, blah. But then that also gives me an opportunity to tell them a little tiny bit about the piece or anything. You don't need an essay, but again, it's all about developing those relationships. I'm a firm believer in the way you make money with art is not one at a time. It's collectors. And if they bought one and they get it home, if anybody's never had original art, it's got life. It has every ounce of energy you dabbed in there, and they feel it. And once they live with it, they're toast, because they'll know the difference, and they're going to come back if they have the means. And
I think that's a lovely way to put it. And like you said, Trisha Adams spoke about the other approach, and in this e-commerce world, because people expect to go online, see something, see what it costs, click buy if they want it, and that's another way of doing it. And
it is.
I think the message isn't that one's right and one's wrong.
Agreed.
I think the artists have to really think about the type of business they want to have. Right?
Yeah.
If you want to move the art and not get deeply involved with the back and forth with collectors, and you just want to sell those pieces, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, of course not.
That's another way to do it. But if you do want to develop these collector relationships and get to know the people and hopefully invest in a longer term, then that not having the price can lead to that more often. So yeah, I don't think there's a yes or no, right or wrong.
I agree. I can tell you my own personal statistic with gallery versus myself. And trust me, because I was a gallery owner, I had to sell a lot of my own work. I hate that. It's really hard to sing your own praises and say, oh, it's mine, and let me tell you about me. This is and that's a hard thing to do. However, what I can say is sales by myself versus sales from the gallery, about 40% more of the gallery sales will become collectors.
Incredible.
I don't know why that is, but it's marked difference. They come back unless you're really wearing a million hats. It takes, if you're selling it yourself, you still have to do all those things. You have to market, you have to frame, you have to ship, you have to correspond, you have to write a newsletter, you have to show them the new work. That just eliminates so much of that for me. And I guess I'm really a little bit snooty in my way I love to buy my art. I love that whole experience. I love it.
I think that's valid. And, galleries have struggled. That whole experience has come and gone in different ways. So it'll be interesting to see what the future holds. This isn't the last time we're going to talk about this.
I love it.
In fact, we have Cheryl Newby, who
fabulous.
Who owned a gallery for many years and has just recently retired, is going to come and talk about it strictly from her perspective as an owner and
good.
Through the year. She'll be joining us in May, so we're looking forward to
I look forward to seeing that. Fabulous.
So thank you to everybody who put your questions in. They were awesome questions. Thank you again, Christine, for a great presentation and giving us your wisdom from both the artist, collector, and gallery owner perspective. That's very unique. And of course, thank you for all you do with AWA.
Oh.
And I want to thank our sponsor, Edmund S. Twining III, who is a very loyal supporter of AWA and is helping us make these webinars possible as an educational program for AWA. So we're excited. So thank you all for joining us. You will have a recording available on YouTube. And Christine, can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, everyone. There is a little printout available with the points, so you don't have to go through an entire, that was a lot of information in that, recorded information.
That available.
We do break it down. I enjoyed sharing with you, and I adore AWA so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.